apologies and our regrets for Kathleen. I'm sure she wanted to be here today. She did prepare the materials, but Carolyn and Heather are going to step in her place. We'll hope she's back in the saddle soon.
And then one of the principals who is going to be here.
Principal.
No, one's principaling, the other one is ill. So,
man.
so Tens, you have Carolyn and I. C team.
Which principals?
C team. Pardon me? I'll get to the task force in a moment so you can see. It's Paul Bodner and Jen Benson are on the elementary. Yes. So the elementary task force has a mission statement. North Shore School District elementary schools provide welcoming, collaborative learning communities. Children are nurtured and challenged through engaging curriculum to develop as learners, leaders, and global citizens. And I think we shared the Wordle, but I'll show you that in a moment. So they worked diligently to get this to craft that mission statement. But here are the members on the task force and the schedule. They meet once monthly, the second Thursday, usually from 4 to 5:30. Usually we're in room 204. And Kathleen leads and facilitates the team. Really great members between the staff and the parents, very strong leaders in all of them and what they share and work together. So it's a great team.
Can I ask, okay, I have a question. On all these task force, do we have any diversity from the community as far as like any of our Hispanic representation or other ethnic groups being represented on these task force?
We didn't specifically solicit that when we did the application process for the task forces. So I would say that to the extent there's diversity, it's probably more geographic diversity. We tried to make sure that we had all the different geographic regions of the district covered as best we could based on who we had applied. But we didn't do that specific kind of criteria that we did, say, for the start time task force.
So the answer is no?
It's more geographic.
It may be there. I don't know all these people personally, but to the extent that we looked at it, diversity when we formed the task forces, we looked at it from a geographic standpoint.
Right.
So my only concern is when we move forward on task force is that I just think that would be an important, like, I know we formed this a couple of years ago, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But moving forward, because like now, I mean, someone's voice, it's hard to get all the voices, but of our.
Well, one thing we can do is to ensure that we're sharing out, getting input, so taking it to our PTSA council, taking it to our natural leaders and
Because the natural leaders aren't on any of these task force, or are they?
No, they are not, no.
Well, I wouldn't.
Is it too late to add anyone at this point?
I don't think they're not on it because they weren't invited. I think because they're completely tapped out.
Well, I'm not making a judgment, I'm just asking the question.
When I actually had a conversation with them about the last boundary open house, and I don't know if it was Maya or Elizabeth just shared that that a committee of this type, because I invited them to apply for the Later Start Time Task Force Committee, and they just said a committee of this type is challenging because they're committed already, and it's really hard for them to make a commitment to attend all of the meetings. But I love that we would reach out to them for sure.
So I would think that it would be difficult to add a task member, unless you had a task member leave. I would think it would be a little difficult to add one in, kind of coming in mid-teamwork. But I think it's a great suggestion to consider that in any future courses that we put together.
And we have had, I think at least one or two people who've had to step away from the task forces for various reasons. And what we've done is we've gone back to the original applicant to try and see people who had expressed an interest before.
Okay. So the work to date. So I think last year they shared, Kathleen shared the Wordle. So one of the things that they did as a team was, after doing some research and reading around elementary schools, what were some of the words that really stood out to the committee members, and they created a Wordle. And then from that Wordle visual, they were able to craft their mission statement. So that's one of the things that they did last year and then brought it into this year. They have worked on building an understanding of what a K-5 environment is and how it will be different than a K-6. And most of what I know that they read and discussed is that a K-5 environment is younger. And so you really lose those 11, 12-year-olds. And so it's a different community of learners. And so that's something they're reading and discussing as a team. They have spent time learning about middle school and from the middle school grade reconfiguration task force. And Heather came in a couple meetings ago, I think it was February, and with a team of folks and shared what was happening on the middle school task force, because some of the questions that the elementary task force folks had, what, how can they help parents, down the road, what to expect when their students are moving into middle school, and they'd like to know as well. So as they're thinking about preparing their students of what to look for and think about for middle school. So Heather and team came. They also have a copy of the book, This We Believe, and are reading it along together just so that they can get a sense of where their kids are going. We've had Jeff Sherwood, our Executive Director of Human Resources, come in and chat with them about qualification for moving to middle school. And last year, Jeff and the HR department provided that information to our elementary teachers, which was really quite a relief to know that their endorsements would reach into middle school, and then if they wanted to be qualified in other things beyond maybe the literacy and the humanities, the social studies and math, that what might they want to do to add on to
So
that.
in general, those sixth grade teachers have some flexibility in terms of?
Yeah, actually, we did it for all K-8
All K-8,
teachers.
yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
So there's kind of two standards you have to get over. One is the state certification standard, so what the state says you can teach, but then there's the federal highly qualified standard. And so we did that, and HR did that analysis for all of our elementary teachers so that they could see if they wanted to be a subject-specific teacher in middle school, if they were qualified to do that, and mainly to get it done beforehand so that if they weren't qualified, but they wanted to be,
They'd
they
have a
could
way
start
of
working,
doing
right,
it
they
right
have
now.
time to start working on it.
And the other questions that they of course have is, well, how is that going to be determined in moving to middle school if you want to stay? So one of our conversations has been, even with, which Heather will share when we get to middle school, is, it's not just sixth grade teachers who will move. It could be intermediate teachers, it could be elementary teachers who really have a desire to be at that grade level. So if you're endorsed in that area, it's not just about, only sixth grade teachers are moving. So that was really important, a piece of information that we shared.
How much of that movement has already taken place? I know a little bit has, but is it on a large scale at all?
Well, we have had elementary teachers who move into junior high. So I think of Paula Cottrell, I think
I hired a couple of
Gordon
them.
Berg.
Gordon Berg. So it does occur.
It just looked like it was starting to shift those around.
It was happening
Yeah,
before that, it was all, yeah.
That's probably always been a dynamic, but certainly once we reconfigure grade levels, it's going to be at scale.
And then they formed work teams this year, so they've got 2 to 3 member work teams, and they are researching, they're reading, and they're going, talking to other districts, and to get some information about the areas that are listed here, part of the work that they're really interested in are the transitions, not only the staff, but also the students, because you're looking at, 5th and 6th graders that are moving together, and they're actually talking about, they're 2nd and 3rd graders right now, so do we create this cohort and what do we do? So how do we think differently about these students and what they will need when they move toward middle school? So they've got a group on transitions, interventions, so there's a couple folks working on what will Title I Latin look like, ELL, some of the programs, special education, and EAP PACE program as it moves from a K-6 to a K-5 program, what would be the changes? Music is big because we want to make sure that, what's it going to look like in the elementary day, and then the connection to middle school, how does, 6, 7, 8 music look? Outdoor education, right now, it's 5th grade, getting ready to be leaders at 6th grade, and we're like, right on, get them ready to be leaders at, middle school. So, they're talking about what, where would outdoor education fit, what role would it play for the K-5 school, and then the communication piece, how do you, what do they need to do to communicate with families and the staff members as we move forward. Okay, so that's the work that's on the plate. So some of the research questions and things that they've been studying, and they're investigating what other districts have done when they've made the transition from a K-6 to a K-5 and a 6-8 school. They're asking, what did you do and why? What was positive things that happened as a result? What were challenges? What would you do? Would you do it again? What would you do differently? And the music task force, a little subcommittee of Jeannie Anderson and Paul, they send out a survey to other districts specifically asking about band and strings and what are they doing before school and during school. So they're gathering that input.
Some of these things around the U.S.
No, here in Washington State, close by. Lake Washington in particular is the freshest that just moved a couple of years ago.
I know Edmonds does it differently.
So they're reaching out to those who have just changed within the last couple of years and those that actually changed a few years ago to find out what's happening. Okay. Important considerations, again, the transitions in the 2017 school year, not only the 5th and 6th graders moving to middle school, but students who are having boundary adjustments, not moving just to 5th, 6th to the middle school at 6th, 7th graders, but any new adjustments for kiddos that are going to be in our elementaries. And as you said, Amy might have had a couple moves.
What do you mean 5th, 6th grade, moving to middle school?
So when we
Do grade reconfiguration?
when we do grade reconfiguration, so in a normal year, 6th graders would move up into 7th grade. So in 17, 18, 5th and 6th grades will move together into 6th and 7th grade at the middle school.
Oh, so
So
Gianna will
2
be the 5th grader. So she moves with the 6th grader, I see.
Right.
Okay, I don't thought of it that way.
Well, so the middle school, we talk about it, the junior high principals around the first year of transition, we're gonna have 2/3 of our students new.
Okay, that makes sense.
Plus
Yeah.
some 8th grade students.
Like 9th, 10th
Who have
together.
been impacted by
6th.
boundary adjustments.
Yeah.
And so the discussion that they've had at the elementary task force and at the middle school task force is having the two teams that are working on transitions to come together. And because we don't want to duplicate and we don't want to lose the opportunity. So as you're thinking about the way that Heather and Kathleen and I talk about it is elementary is giving students to middle school and the middle school are receiving them. So what are we doing to make the transition work for both? And then as junior high or
You're gifting to
they're
the high
giving
school.
to the high school, and 10th grade and the high school's receiving. So
Yeah.
we're talking
Yeah.
together about how do we make sure that our teams are really working together, especially with the transitional piece.
So I want another question, back to your research questions, being that, is this a good time to ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, being that we had such support at our board meetings for music. Are they reaching down to our music people within our own district and making sure to survey and ask,
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Ted, maybe?
Yes,
Yes.
so on both task forces, on elementary and on middle school task forces, we have music specialists. So
I mean that
Jeannie-
positively.
Yeah.
So Jeannie Anderson is on the elementary, and she's leading the charge with Paul Bodnar on the little subcommittee. And then Debbie Montag from Kenmore Junior High is on the middle school task force, and they are working in concert and with the two teams plus Ted. So we're really trying to make sure
Oh,
that.
so he is a part of it?
Yes,
Good.
absolutely.
Okay.
So I think the general operating premise is that something in the service delivery model will change in 2017, 18. It won't be, I mean, right now it's a 4, 5, 6 model. It'll only be a 4, 5 model. I think generally there's an acceptance that it probably needs, the model needs to change from this kind of regional high transportation need-based model that we've had. I think the question is, what should it be? Does it happen at the schools? Does it happen
Do we
within
put
the
it
school
within the
day?
day?
Something, different
Right.
districts do it different ways. For instance, in Edmonds, if you're, I don't know if it's 5th or 6th grade, you can begin music, but you would take band or orchestra in lieu of your general music course.
Which makes sense, yeah.
So-
Someone else,
so
I
it'd
heard
be-
someone else talking about
Yeah,
that.
so there's different ways of doing it out there. Of course, general music teachers tend to not like that because they think everybody should have general music. So I mean, but I think they're doing all of that kind of vetting to see kind of what all the options are.
And what they're finding is no one does, I mean, there is not one
Yeah.
way.
Right.
There's no model we can
There is
replicate.
no one that is like, here's the idea. So that's some work to do. And, but they're reaching out to districts within their groups. I know that Ted and the music folks meet, consistently throughout the year to give input and to talk together, so.
So we're reaching out and
With
down.
Yes. Yes.
Down's probably not a good term,
Well, that-
but, this is the leader of the task force and she's reaching to our other people within that.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed, yeah.
And that would go for
Yes, and
Eve
Jane,
and,
yes, deep in line.
And I know Dawn has mentioned this before, but I too would love the idea of band and strings that were accessible to all students, so that was a model that.
They're taking it on. They're really interested in trying to figure out what, we don't want to lose music. We know how important it is, but what will that look like? Nancy last.
nobody wants to lose music.
Absolutely. So a couple weeks ago, Nancy Young, who was part of the committee, came to talk to them about, or share with them full-day kindergarten in all schools, and as that's required by law in 2017, what that's beginning to look like and could be like, and the changes for that. And so that was a really good information for them. We're reaching out, Heather and Gretchen and team are reaching out for training and educating elementary teachers on music, middle school. So I think I think there was a schedule shared with 6 different sessions that elementary teachers could go to a middle school or a junior high right now and hear about middle school and determine, if their interest and what questions that they have. So we're just trying to push the information out and gather input from a variety of folks. We're looking at having, I hope I'm not going to jump your thunder, but have a middle school institute this summer. So we'll have, the high school, the middle school, and elementary summer institute for teachers to really start grounding folks in what are going to be some of the differences in the program.
Are we at the same time working, because of the initiative 1351, are we at the same time trying to figure that out in this task force?
No, so our, the EDTF has been operating, so they've been drawing boundaries and looking at capacity with the expectation of full-day kindergarten coming online in 17-18. They have not been incorporating the 1351 K3 class size reductions. I mean, there's, we're 4 or 5 elementaries short to
Right.
make that happen.
But in this dialogue, because we potentially could add teacher assistants or whatever, is that part of this conversation?
It has not been. But I think we're really gonna have to wait and see kind of what the legislature does
Yeah.
with that this year and then determine what, and it'll be more than a North Shore conversation, it'll be a lot of districts, if you don't have classroom space to get to 17-1, and the legislature somehow finds a way to fund it, what other opportunities, what other options do you have to utilize whatever new resources might come from the state?
There were some other options that were built into 1351 in terms of
Teaching
one
assistants,
teacher in
yeah.
a classroom.
It's more restrictive if you're a high poverty school,
Yeah.
which may not impact us at all or to a great extent. So, yeah, there's still the issue out there with, meanwhile, the pipeline of teachers is getting smaller. It's a more complex system.
I didn't want to just digress, I just
Yeah.
wanted to see, are we on having that conversation? So we're not.
Not an issue.
Yeah. So the other thing I should have mentioned about the transitions is that they're not only talking about the current second and third graders being a cohort, because they're the ones that are actually going to make the grade reconfiguration transition to the middle school, but also really looking at making sure that they do special days or activities for each grade level. So not to lump them all together as, oh, you're all 5th and 6th, you're going to move. And so it's just going to be one meeting or one celebration. Jen Benson really and her team have found out from other districts that they had special day for 5th graders and their parents, and then a special one for 6th graders and their parents. So they're looking at making sure that both groups, even though they're a cohort, they know that they're special and they move forward. And then also having really good concrete examples and ideas that we can have in place that we can share with schools so that there's a consistent message and things that we do at all schools, and give parents ideas of what we're looking to do in the next couple of years when we get there. We are, as a team, talking about making sure we have a distribution, I guess, of special ed and EAP programs across the district. So one of the great things is every couple of weeks, Kathleen, Heather, and Becky and I meet, and we talk about, okay, if we're going to move to 4 pathways or feeder patterns, is there a way that we can be more equitable so there's not such a huge bus ride or stress on kiddos, you know, especially more fragile ones who would be better with a bus ride that wasn't so long, or we'd be able to serve them within feeder patterns. And that we know that can't do that until we actually have some space in the other schools. But we are.
It's on the horizon.
It is on the horizon, and it's something we're talking about. And then as we shared, Banded Strings program, really want to figure that out. How do we either place it in the day, and what would that mean? But or what do we need to do with that model? Outdoor education. You know, what role is it going to play in a K-5? We've been using it the last couple of years as a leadership building for 5th graders moving to 6th grade. So do we move that to 4th grade? Do we put it at the beginning of 5th grade? Does it change or morph?
Or is it a culminating event?
Is it a culminating event that you
And
made it
elementary.
Yeah, exactly. So just trying to figure out what's the purpose and what do we want the outdoor ed to be able to do for our kids. And then PACE, really looking at the K-5 model and what needs is the PACE program providing us at this time. Work ahead, by June, the elementary task force hopes to have a full report from all the committees, and so that we have recommendations from each work team. and then they're going to plan for the 15-16 school year, in particular being ready for the transition work, as we know where the boundaries are hopefully going to be set, finalized in the spring of 2016. So, that's elementary as we know it. It feels, I don't know, it's a great team that's really working together to try to create an elementary school that's going to really nurture and yet challenge kids and be that. I mean, if you look at the words that came up in the wording, you'll see that they're really interested in.
Now, do you guys see opportunities, and maybe this is something we can ask Kathleen, but opportunities like you referenced with the high school reconfiguration, gives you opportunities to maybe freshen, it's not curriculum, right, but the project-based learning and those ideas.
Absolutely.
Looking at that for elementary, do you see it as being a similar level of effort? It sounded like for high school perhaps there were a lot of things that people were investigating. Do you have any feel for elementary? Just kind of wondering. I hear in the news a lot more about the high school level. I don't know.
I think the project, it appears to me and it seems to me in listening to the folks, it seems that the elementary teachers do a lot of collaboration now and working together and working with groups. I think less on project-based that way,
Right.
but really still trying to engage students in pushing the rigor and figuring out where does science go. I think that's going to be the big push for elementary, and thinking what is a K-5 school, and what changes at all with what's coming with the core. Yeah.
I think when you consider our elementaries as well, they're probably a bit farther along than some of our secondaries. If you think to our visits, how much small group instruction you
Yes.
see.
PLCs.
Yeah.
Interventions.
Yeah, kids being, identified and targeted instruction to specific groups of kids that have common learning needs. Much less all group instruction. I'm trying to think of the last time I was in a classroom, say in one of our visits, where I saw
Right.
whole group instruction
Yeah.
taking place at elementary. So,
Differentiated.
yeah, so they're a bit more evolved in that way than our secondaries.
And one of the things
High
we,
school.
to recognize the importance of the transition and the communication and articulation with the elementary task force and the middle school, as we have those 5th and 6th graders move, is they have their year-end activities, we have orientation events that need to be done, we have to think about camp. So how do we structure that within a calendar at the end of the school year? So there's lots of need for communication and coordination. So I'm excited about the work of getting together with a full committee to really dig in and analyze that.
We're talking about the assessment as well. If you think about at 6th grade, currently we use the ITBS as an assessment to help us with lab and some of the double jump math.
Right.
And then you think, wow, what do we push? Does it go to 5th grade? Is it something we need to reconsider? So that's also part of the work as you're thinking about the assessment plan.
Are the groups doing any research on homework and how homework fits in at all of the levels?
It has not come up at the middle school or high school task force. That has not been one of our topics that has come up, or maybe we haven't viewed that as our charge either.
Right.
Certainly individual schools are having discussions around homework and grading practices, but that feels like that's outside of our realm of responsibility.
On the outdoor education piece, I know that you were talking about that you said it was training for leadership
I think
in
it's
6th grade. Could you elaborate on what
I don't know if
the OEP says?
what the what says?
What the OE, remember his OE?
Right. No, I probably can't go with the OEOA.
OEOA, outdoor education, overnight experience.
Yeah, I can't name that for you. I would really need Kathleen to be there. But I know it switched in particular from 6th grade to the 5th grade to provide some leadership, I thought, some experiences. So as they moved into 6th grade at the beginning of the year, that they would have, they had been together as a team, as a group, and then they moved into 6th grade. But I would not be able to name it.
I would need that, yeah.
And so I know what we had before was quite education about the outdoors. But what we moved to was a program that was something we ordered from, the server, or the provider
The provider.
that's actually doing it. And I believe that there were different choices that you could make that
I don't know.
kind of put it where you, what you wanted to develop.
I can,
And so,
Yeah, I think there was, the Camp Cedar Springs, they'll provide all the way up to all of the programming or whatever level of programming you want to provide, then they'll provide the balance of it. And I think it's kind of on a sliding scale. Whereas I think at Camp Casey, pretty much all the programming was on the school
right.
to put on.
I can ask, we'll bring
Yeah,
that.
because I've done a lot of outdoor education, honestly, and so I was just wondering what it is we're expecting of them, since you mentioned that they'll, if we go in 5th grade, and they're not gonna be there anymore, what is it, what are you thinking of?
So do we have to do a
Long-term?
culmination or is it?
Yeah.
Right.
Is it launching or is
Is
it
it
4th grade?
launching? Yes.
But then it is, I mean, even getting you to work together as a team, it almost goes into your transitions concept pretty well.
I heard you say that that's part of what you guys are discussing.
Yes, yes, there's a subcommittee. A little team looking at that. I will ask that. Yep, and have it for.
I didn't see on the important considerations ELL.
It's, it was part of the, it's part of the interventions and it's also part of the, back to here? Yeah, it's,
Special education.
Should be
Interventions,
title
I
that.
left.
yeah, I mentioned it under interventions.
Okay.
And part of what the team is looking at with Becky and the ELL task force is what about the dual language and moving into an immersion? And could we have another program that was one of, the things that they're looking at?
So Janelle Finney and Kim Durkin are both on the,
They're on our committee.
are on the task force. So Kim, Special Ed Director for Elementary, and then Janelle oversees Title Lab, ELL, all the intervention
Okay.
services
Yeah.
and programs.
So I know that during this whole late start and with our survey that we put out, it was really important to get the voice of the Hispanic community, and that we felt that that wasn't representative of what we were doing, though all these other parents that were not Hispanic wanted a certain thing, we felt we didn't hear their voices. So I just want to make sure that we're being consistent across the spectrum, and that even if I'm looking at this, is this, and I'm not saying it's not, I'm just asking the question, is this representative of our Indian families and our Hispanic families to some of the words that they would put? So it probably is, but just making sure that their voices are coming to the table, even if they're not part of the task force, that reaching deep and wide. And again, I'm not saying that you guys aren't doing that, but remembering that for me as a board member is being consistent with that across all aspects of what we're doing.
On the Middle School Summer Institute, is that open K through 12 for teachers?
Yeah, it'll be by teachers who choose.
Teachers who are interested? To me, that was an aha, that it would be enormously valuable, even if I'm 2nd or 3rd grade or 10th and 11th grade, to have an understanding of where my kids are going or where they come from and what that, how that looks different.
That's kind of
That's great.
Okay. Middle schools.
Okay.